Okay, so here are the answers to these questions. Number one, what do you believe is the next step in progress after RFID implants? Well, I think RFID implants will probably be around for a while. They have a lot of advantages, like they don't have any battery power, they don't have any, you know, active transmission mechanisms. So there's definitely a lot of utility for use in vivo. And as technology increases their capabilities, I think you know we're going to see some pretty sophisticated, passively powered and passive data transmission devices. So in fact, that's what we're working on is the next generation of secure implantable devices at VivoKey. So number two, internet connectivity in RFID implants. Is it possible at this point in time? If not, will it be possible? How would internet connectivity change the way RFID implants are used? Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by internet connectivity. So if you mean like a powered device that is talking to the internet at all times, like always on, always connected, that's not really an RFID or passively powered device because it doesn't have a battery, it doesn't have a power source of its own. It would be very limited scope on how it could actually interact with the internet. But if you are talking about participating in an internet-based transaction, then sure, that's totally possible. And in fact, that's what we're doing at VivoKey is creating an implant device and a family of implant products that will participate in some way in an internet transaction. And so what does that mean? That means, for example, if I were to put a Bitcoin wallet on my in vivo implant, so the wallet, the private keys, and the actual Bitcoin transaction signing occurs in vivo in the implant. That allows a level of security and safety for storing those critical Bitcoin wallet keys in my body. So, but Bitcoin and blockchain don't work without the internet. So when I want to transact, then I would interact my wallet device with a smartphone or a reader, and then that would participate on the transiting the transaction to the blockchain, so it could be integrated. And so in that way, the implant is involved in an internet connected transaction or internet connected activity. So that's already happening. Um, Number three, some experts, philosophers of science, warn the public about the slippery slope of storing personal information in our bodies. Is this a valid concern? Why or why not? Should we be concerned about information theft, abuse going forward? Um, the reality is that slippery slope arguments are uh, they're impotent. They don't really have any true effect, and that means what I mean by that is people argue we shouldn't do X because slippery slope. But that never works. Humans, if they can imagine it, it happens, right? If we can do it, we will. We can, and we do. And so, and that's for everything: technological development, crazy, nasty crimes that people make up in their heads, then go do. Like there is nothing that can't be imagined that people won't try to do. And so, saying we shouldn't is irrelevant. What we should be doing is taking those slippery slope arguments and trying to guide the behavior and the development in a way that is the safest to deploy. So um, don't say, it's a slippery slope. Just say, what's the worst case scenario? What and how can we avoid those worst case scenarios as this technology develops? It's like having a child that wants to run across the street, and you can yell, no, 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 but they are going to run across the street. So what do? The best thing to do is to hold their hand and make sure they get across the street safely. That's how all human development should work. And so, um, storing information in the body, that's just a really narrow, myopic view of what the possibilities are, and it belies a lack of understanding about how cryptography works and public key encryption. And it really has nothing to do with the information stored in bodies. I mean, this is a very 1970s type of question. It's like, assuming there is no security, assuming there is no, um, you know, cognitive approach to actually making a system work well, and to protect your privacy rather than endanger it. Is constantly, people are thinking of this thing as like um, for lack of a better word, like a piece of paper that you just write information on and anybody can come read, and therefore storing information in the body is bad. No, that's a terrible misrepresentation of how the actual technology works. And when we're talking about crypto-secure algorithms that are standards-based, the stuff that protects bank accounts and websites and SSL, that kind of technology, public key technology, that's really the crux of the argument. So I wouldn't say, is it bad to store information in our bodies? No, like of course not. So let's take an example. Uh, Medical records, right? Storing medical records in vivo. What makes storing those records inside the body versus in a computer system that's accessible via the internet, what makes it better or worse? The questions that are asked or should be asked are, how is that data protected? How do we ensure that only the correct people get access to it? Um, and if you want to compare apples and apples here, an EMR system that's connected to the internet that doctors' offices can access, it's connected to the internet. Anybody can attack that system from anywhere. It's much more vulnerable than a system that's actually in vivo, where an attacker who wanted to get information had to physically be there with you. That's like orders of magnitude safer just in the mode and method of access. So again, I mean, like the question is just not good enough. You need to expand, think bigger about the real concerns about this type of data storage and access. Yeah. Number 4, is there anything that you think should not be stored in implants for the moral ethics boundaries? Yeah, I don't know. It's just no. Like, what would you not want to store securely and safely in an implant? Like, again, this question's not about. It's just badly. It's badly asked. It shouldn't be about what we store. It's about what's the utility of storing it there and who has access and why and how. Like, that's everything. Like, it's not. It just seems like it's not really addressing the real issue of, like, for example, I'll give an example, the medical records thing again, because it's very simple, and everybody knows what a medical record is. So um, reasons to not store medical record in your body. I think the misguided concern would be that somebody could read it and then know that you're allergic to peanuts and then give you peanuts to kill you, or something stupid like that. Um, but your medical record is either stored on paper in a doctor's office that anybody could probably walk back and grab and read. Um, if it's stored on electronically, like it's supposed to be to keep current with the law, then it's on a vulnerable system that could be vulnerable to attack, that you have no way to audit. Anybody on the internet could attempt to attack that system and get copies of your medical records. Um, or, it could be in vivo stored so that if you're unconscious and you have an insulin or your problem, or you're given your prescription drugs that interact with common, common drugs given by EMTs, then you'd want them to know that immediately, regardless of whether or not they have internet access to get to your electronic medical record, which no EMTs ever do anyway. So, again, I just can't see it properly secured. I can't see a reason why you shouldn't store uh, critical information about yourself in your implant. But again, it comes down to, is there a system in place for making use of that information? Just storing the information there is like a tenth of the solution. The rest of it is, do the EMTs know? Is there a standards protocol in place to scan people's implants to get their information? How do we make sure that the EMT's phone can get it, get that information? The EMT tier, there's probably a doctor tier, EMT, public, probably different tiers of access for what information is available to who. So there's a whole system, that has to be deployed. But assuming you get a secure system like that in place for whatever kind of information you want to store, I can't see there being a downside. Number 5, what are we gaining with these implants? What are we losing? Gaining, I would say the most obvious one is convenience. But the other thing is this: it's in a key replacement application where you replace your keys with an electronic lock and you can get in with an implant. It's something that I've been doing for over a decade. It's not just the getting rid of the keys, it's not just the days that you lose your keys that I don't miss losing my keys, that's for sure. It's the fact that you're getting rid of the management burden of dealing with your keys all the time. So the constant checking of pockets, the constant removing the keys out of your back pocket so you can sit down comfortably, the constant checking your pockets when you get up. Did I forget them? Did they fall out? Did I lose them? This constant tension it creates a burden of management for all the things in our lives that we need to manage to be able to participate in modern society. Keys, wallet, phone, these things demand our attention like modern day Tamagotchis. And I've been able to get rid of 1/3 of that management burden, which is not insignificant. Um, the other thing that we gain is robust access, meaning like cryptography's been around for a long time and it's very powerful. It works. We can secure stuff. Federal government has to beg Apple to unlock a phone because of security and cryptography. So cryptography is powerful, and the power of it is tied to the keys, the tokens and the keys that govern access. And so if you have your life secured with strong cryptography, you are secure. You've secured it. It's very good, very strong. But if you lose that security key, that token, that cryptographic token, then you lose access to your whatever you've secured. So um, having something that's not losable or forgettable is really, really critical, and an implant solves that problem. But the other side of it is just simply um, always available. It's always there, right? It's if I need to unlock an encrypted laptop, or I need to validate my identity, or I need to use it to get into my house, it's always there, and it's there in a way that is not, losable like a ring or a wearable. It's not something that needs to be managed like a ring or a wearable, and it's not something that could be lost or forgotten. It's not, it's just um, it's fundamentally different when you have something that's designed well as an implant. And by that, I mean it's frictionless, it's managementless. It goes in your body, you forget you even have it. It's like your kidneys and your heart. They work hard for you all day long, every day. You don't even give them a second thought. And that's exactly how my implants are. I just use them. I don't even give them a second thought. I don't have to worry about charging them or managing them. It's very, very straightforward. So there's normally a relationship between security and convenience, and they're usually inverse. So something that's highly secure is not usually convenient, and vice versa. If it's convenient, it's not typically secure. So an implant can break that relationship and make something both secure and convenient at the same time. And so there's a lot to be gained. As far as losing, that's a very philosophical question. I don't think there's any kind of tangible loss that I could describe. Um, there's like it's less risky than an ear piercing. It's less, it takes far less healing time than an ear piercing. It's less painful than like blood draw. Um, you know, the physical risks, the medical risks, the privacy and security risks. I mean, there are no risks. You're actually improving your privacy and security if you use the technology properly to secure your life. So, the losing thing I think is all just ethereal nonsense that people who've watched too many Hollywood movies kind of think that there's this huge impact that's negative, slippery slope argument all over again. Until there's people that can actually come up with a tangible argument, I would love to talk to them. But the way I see it, this is extremely low hurdle, to augment your capabilities as a human being, and the functionality that you gain is huge. So, number 6, can you comment on the body modification element of RFID implants? What is so alluring about augmenting human bodies, in my opinion? Well, I mean, it's not really a body modification per se. I would say it's an augmentation, but that's the same as augmenting ourselves with binoculars to see farther, or any tool that's temporary that we use. Humans have always been about augmentation, always. We're tool users as a species from the very beginning of picking up rocks and sticks to do a better job of smashing things. We've been dying to augment our capabilities, flying, everything we do is to augment our capabilities and our experience of the world and our way to interact with the world. So really, there's nothing new on that front about an RFID implant. It's just a continuation of millennia of years of trying to improve our capabilities as human beings. The connection with body modification is that as a kind of a biohacking early adopter kind of type of product, especially when I started Dangerous Things in 2013, the best way to move forward would be to partner with body modification artists and body piercers, because they totally understood needles and skin, aseptic procedure. They work out of licensed studios, and they get it, right? Whereas a medical doctor, they have a whole different approach to what they're doing. Their approach is to try to restore function to the human body, and an augmentation like an implant, an RFID implant, doesn't really fit that mold. And so in the medical field, you'd have to go to a cosmetic surgeon who is about aesthetic augmentation, but augmentation nonetheless. So The problem with that is when you go to the cosmetic surgeon, they're used to, they make a single cut with a scalpel and that's $1,000, please. So the economics didn't line up. It's $40 to get a piercing. So we partnered with Body Mod Community, and they, received the concept very well. And it's a match made in heaven. But as we move on with VivoKey technologies, the idea is that we're bringing this technology out of the biohacker market, out of the early adopter stage, and bringing it to a more mass market approach. So now we're talking to medical doctors, clinics, offices, labs, nurses, things like that, to try to kind of elevate this thing out of the kind of the shadows of biohacking and into something that grandma might hear about and maybe even use. Okay, last thing, personal note, can you tell me how you became interested in implant technology, a story or a moment in your life that sparked the interest? Yeah, it's very simple. 2005, I was getting into my office on a regular basis carrying heavy equipment, very annoyed at the door for not knowing it was me, and looked at skin, biometric skin systems, um, fingerprint readers, iris scanners, things like that. They were clunky and expensive, and they really weren't well suited for outdoors because the sensors were sensitive to, pollution and moss and rain and dirt and, just the elements. And so, and they're not much better today, but at the time, an RFID card, great idea. I just wanted to get rid of the card as well. So get rid of keys, get rid of the card, and the implants made sense. So that was really it. I just I went from there, wrote the book RFID Toys, and by the time the Maker Revolution really got a good solid start, and people started wanting to follow suit, implanting, building systems themselves, building RFID readers, implanting things. So I started Dangerous Things, and now we're on to VivoKey. So let me know if you have any other questions, and we'll talk to you later.